If you're just joining us here at the top of the hour, there were protests in Dayton today, planned protests, and for the most part, up until about 7:30, the mayor said there's only been 4 or 5 arrests. Officers, as you see right there, throughout the afternoon and into the early evening. Protesters, they were nonviolent. There was 1 injury, according to Sheriff Streck, as he told me on the phone tonight. One of his deputies was hit by a rock. Somebody was throwing rocks. People were throwing rocks. That deputy did have to go to the hospital with a laceration, but will be okay. And it was as we grew closer to sunset and then nightfall is when things started to get out of hand. As I'm seeing this for the first time, you can see that there was something you can see tear gas that was fired into the crowd. Someone there threw it back at police officers. And as people in that area were running, another tear gas canister back toward the crowd and then back at police. Again, this is in the last 25 to 30 minutes. That was at Courthouse Square.
We saw Dayton police basically popping rounds of tear gas, and when we put Sky 7 up, we could see with the drone these clouds of tear gas coming up from these groups. They would disperse. Dayton police trying to break everyone up.
Yeah, good description, John. You obviously can't see what we're showing live on television right now, but that is Sky 7 video as Sky 7 moved ever so slowly closer to pretty much right on top of City Hall, folks. City Hall right there, screen left with the red facade.
Maybe about 15 to 20 minutes ago, this area was just cloudy. That's because officers were deploying some tear gas, and I'm not going to lie, I got caught a little bit in the middle of it. We actually saw people knocking down these planters. I'm going to have my photographer pan over to these huge planters that you see right here. I mean, there was multiple people at one time just pushing these.
Now, this is the video that I saw that was really concerning of me. When you see officers pull their weapons, you can see an officer right there. I don't know what he has or what the 2 of those gentlemen have. I don't know if those are tear gas, firing, pieces of machinery. I do not know, but when you see an officer raise a weapon like that, that is obviously a much different concern. You see officers here as well as they had their shields to protect themselves as they were trying to gain some sort of control there on Courthouse Square. I'm looking here at Live 2. That is John. Matt, if we could go back to John. John, I see them putting a lot of focus on that door there. They have their shields on and their helmets on. Any idea? Can you give us any indication what you've seen there in the last minute and a half?
So, Paul, you said you perform here at MJ's.
Yes, we were supposed to have a show tonight, and so we all came downtown. We're all hanging out, and then they were announcing the protest. So we're like, okay, we're going to stay in the building because I live outside of downtown, and they. The people were coming through here, throwing rocks at the building and everything, so the owners were like, get out of my area.
This started as a peaceful protest here in Dayton today, right around noon, and then at about 8:30, closer to 9, when the curfew was to start in downtown Dayton, that's when that started.
James, this young man you're seeing in handcuffs here in the green jacket, he came up to the police line, started shouting at them, and police told him to disperse, said, you either get out of here, we're going to arrest you, and he kept saying things to the police. I would describe them as taunts, and then we saw one Dayton police officer say, disperse here, I'm going to arrest you. And that when I saw another Dayton police officer just take off running towards him and say, Dayton police, you're under arrest. And they caught up to him about halfway down the block here and arrested him. And they have told the rest of the people that are here to disperse or they're going to arrest him. I heard the one Dayton officer say that they didn't want to arrest anybody, but they said they have to get out of here or they're going to do that. And that has been what we saw here in the last 2 or 3 minutes here. They're giving all these people orders to disperse, and we're moving back towards the line of police and back around the corner here, James, as this crowd moves back towards the officers here at Jefferson and 3rd.
This is from earlier in the day, and you can see a line of officers in the bottom portion of your screen, and then you had some protesters. There was a good buffer there of 15, 20 feet as they pushed those protesters slowly back.
We've also seen plenty of this. Here is just a Dayton police officer just having a very calm conversation with a gentleman right here on the corner of Jefferson and 3rd. And we've seen a lot of that tonight, too. There's been plenty of just civil conversations. And in fact, that officer that was just talking to that gentleman on the corner, James, he was the one who was very calmly telling these folks, look, he was the one saying, we don't want to arrest anybody tonight.
A lot of the police officers, I feel like they're in those intersections to make sure that people aren't lingering here in downtown. But first, I'm going to show you a little bit. If you can tell, there was damage. I told you that someone was attempting to break some windows from this building, and you can see one. I know it's a little dark out here, so you might not be able to see it very well, but there is a broken window there.
As Monica was talking just a few minutes ago, how the switch kind of changed. And I want to tell you, when I was on my way in, I was talking with John Bedell on the phone. I was also messaging one of my law enforcement officers, and that law enforcement officer at a little after 7 o'clock said, this is not good. The mayor came on at 7:30. That's when the mayor said that, listen, there is going to be a curfew in downtown Dayton and the Oregon District 9 to 6. And I think somebody, while she was talking with reporters, asked, okay, well, what's going to happen if people break that curfew? She was very blunt, saying they're going to get arrested. Because John asked specifically, is this curfew just for tonight, or is it until further notice? We were told until further notice, from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. for downtown Dayton and for the Oregon District. So maybe we'll get some more clarification when the mayor steps in front of news cameras.
The majority of the people that came to downtown to show their voices were peaceful, were thoughtful. Unfortunately, what we see in this, or we see some people that may not even be from our community.
We heard that there was possibly shots fired. Can you speak to that?
There were 3 calls of shots fired. None of those could be confirmed absolutely as being valid. We did investigate those. There was a particular incident at MJ's.
Your takeaway from what the chief shared with you tonight about MJ's?
Well, he did speak to that there were shots fired, but at this point in time, they do not know in what location or where any of that could have happened. I know you mentioned there was a very chaotic scene at the time, so that is something that they're still looking into.
John, I'm going to toss it back out to you. We just heard a lot from not only Chief Beal but Mayor Nan Whaley. You were just a couple blocks away. We haven't chatted with you in a bit. Your new perspective for us here at 10:45 at night.
Chief Beal, what did he say, James? 3 different reports of gunfire downtown, so they're not trying to figure out, okay, did it come from over here? Right, so during one of those 3 reports, okay, we see somebody dart into MJ's. Mm-hmm. We think it might be related. It's in the general area where we might have heard it, and now they're bursting into that place saying, looking for a gunfire suspect, a shooting suspect. At that point, they think potentially. Obviously, they cleared things up, and that was not what was going on inside MJ's. But as you pointed to, James, in that fog of that moment, police trying to sort out very quickly what's going on.
Folks, we are now at the top of the 11 o'clock hour. Very busy day and very busy night in downtown Dayton with protests, and unfortunately, those protests tonight turned violent. In downtown Dayton, as I said, they started with hundreds of protesters, and early on it was peaceful. But around 2 p.m., somebody started throwing rocks. One hit and injured a deputy, and Sheriff Streck told me he had to go to the hospital tonight. And when some in the crowd did not listen, that's when police had to pull someone back behind the line. That was about 8 o'clock tonight. We have Team 7 coverage for you tonight. I'm going to start with News Center 7's John Bedell. He joins us live in Dayton, as he has been reporting the last few hours, where police were forced to use that tear gas, as we talked about, to make an arrest this evening in response to violence.
Actually, this was closer to 9 at this point. Now we end up over here down by Courthouse Square. And I was talking about earlier, we were parked right between the Schuster Center and the Key Bank building on 2nd Street. And Chuck ended up right about where you can see this neon, where that ATM is right there at the base of the Key Bank building, where that red neon sign is around the ATM. Chuck was there when he shot the video that we've shown you a couple times here on Channel 7 tonight.
In the last 30 minutes or so, she spoke with Chief Richard Beal and Dayton Mayor Nan Whaley. Monica?
And all of this really started to get going when the mayor had issued that curfew and people were needing to leave the downtown area. What you're looking at right now is glass from some of the bottles that were being thrown toward police, but it was in this area that it got really heated. Police were trying to get people to get out of the downtown area. As I mentioned, I actually saw with my own eyes a teenager just trying to knock out that window. They were throwing something. I'm not too sure if it was a bottle or a rock, but but there was several attempts to get these windows knocked out. Luckily, the other ones look okay. I think this was the only one that I noticed knocked out, but that was just some of the chaos that ensued in this area. I know Chief Beal also mentioned just people not acting appropriately. We saw people speeding through the area, people in vehicles driving, doing donuts in an area.
Members of our community, like so many across the country, fearful that their loved ones could die because of the color of their skin. And that is just one of the stories News Center 7's Renell Hunt heard today. He joins us live. Renell?
James, one of multiple stories that I heard as one of those women that I talked to were walking right on a Dayton street like what I'm standing on right now. And as you can tell, this street is relatively empty along with others because of the curfew that was put in place at 9 tonight. But for hours, they were filled with a message of understanding pain behind the protests over George Floyd's death.
I have 4 sons and 7 grandsons, and I fear for their life. I honestly do.
Concerned for her family, felt compelled Manya Levette to protest peacefully, but she says she understands why some are not.
I don't condone the violence, but sometimes this is the only way we can get someone's attention. I just want a safety violence. We have people to die for our right.
Throughout the day, we witnessed civil unrest. Some people blocking on-ramps to major roadways as protesters attempted to enter those. Some peaceful.
Some people don't know what time it is, so they pushing and shoving and trying to provoke a situation. People came out here peacefully, so we're not going to let it really turn into beyond peaceful.
But it did at Dayton Police Headquarters, some throwing items like bottles and rocks at police. This footage from Sky 7 shows police responding with chemical gas. Through all this, Asia Gibbs feels her demand is simple: understanding.
We show up here today not to harm the police or to put them in the fear that we experience every day, but for solutions. The time of yelling and screaming and burning has passed. It's time for them to come up with some solutions.
Now, that is a big part of what I heard today. Protesters just asking for a solution. It is a sentiment that we have heard all across the nation, including right here in Dayton. Live in Dayton, Ronell Hunt, News Center 7.
And Columbus police declared an emergency in downtown today, and Governor DeWine has activated the Ohio National Guard. The Guard will only be helping the police response in Columbus. Protesters spent the last 2 nights there in the downtown area and filled the streets again today. Now, police there have had to use pepper spray to get the crowds to break up, and those flashbangs as well to try and disperse the crowd. 2 officers wound up getting hurt, and at least 5 people were arrested last night. Businesses downtown have had to deal with damage as well. And today, the governor and the mayor of Columbus announced a curfew from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. That's for the city until further notice.
Acts of violence cannot and will not be tolerated.
Now, the curfew is in place this weekend from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. in Cincy, just like Columbus. Again, this is some pictures from last night. And Cincinnati's mayor said a majority of the more than 200 protesters were peaceful, but a smaller group broke away and damaged and looted some businesses. At least 11 people wound up in handcuffs. This is Courthouse Square. We have shown this numerous times, but it is very powerful. Gives you a perspective of just how quickly things changed, and not for the better in downtown. Officers were there. They at some point had to fire tear gas into a crowd. You're seeing there's somebody ran in through that can, and just moments later, another can of tear gas goes back into the crowd. A second person throws the can back at officers, and as they were dispersing the crowd. But what was so concerning, right around this time, there was a Signal 99, meaning officers calling for help. There were reports of gunfire, too, right around this time.
That moment where you saw that canister being thrown back, if I had to describe it the way it felt, that was sort of the beginning of the apex of the tensions down here in downtown Dayton before it. Eventually, the police, that was right when that 99 was issued, and a lot of help came here, and they de-escalated things. And then just down the block from Courthouse Square on 3rd, here you can see some of the vandalism. This is the building that the Dayton Area Chamber of Commerce has recently moved into. It's the one that the Port Authority here in Dayton and Montgomery County is in.
Monica also was watching you off camera right before we came back live here. People are cleaning up already from some of the mess left behind, as you can see.
Actually, yeah, this guy just walked up here on the sidewalk, and he is putting up one of those trash cans. Like I mentioned earlier today, we've seen a lot of people just tossing those, and we have a good Samaritan here just, picking that up and trying to get downtown Dayton looking nice. But yeah, we also did show you that glass earlier that was broken into. This is at Premier Health Center. We noticed that, there's a huge hole, but it hasn't gone all the way through. So you could see the shards of glass that are on the ground over here. But that's just some of the damage that we're seeing. And of course, I guess, as the night goes on and into tomorrow, people will be looking and assessing what damage may have been done to their property.
Folks, as I say goodnight tonight, I want to show you the video that we have seen so many times tonight, but I think it puts in perspective what we've been through in this country over the last 5 to 7 days and what we went through today here in the city of Dayton and downtown. The question I ask is, where do we go from here? What do we do? The mayor of this city tonight, Mayor Nan Whaley, says we have some serious work to do with race relations. I can tell you there are arguments on both sides of this coin. We have wonderful people in this community, and I think moving forward we all can do more. We can all work better together. As we saw what happened for the most part today, it was mostly civil in downtown Dayton for several hours. But then this is what happened. Thankfully, it was not nearly as bad, as I'm trying to look at this glass half full, it was not nearly as bad in downtown Dayton tonight on this Saturday here in 2020 as it has been in other parts of the country. So for that, I'm grateful. But as we move forward as a community, let's try to be open-minded. Let's try to work together, and let's move forward. We live in a wonderful community here in the Miami Valley. As we look at the night sky, as we look toward downtown, from here at 1611 South Main Street, folks, I wish you well, and I'm proud to live in this community, and I'm proud to call you my friends and my neighbors. I wish you well, and we will see you again soon.